Hi, everyone. I'm Professor Ford, and welcome to Journalism Week. We are so excited. Let's give a round of applause for Morehouse Journalism. We are doing major things, and each one of the faculty have curated a panel, and this is mine, and we have worked so hard to pull our the people that we have relationships with that we know that can bring you the best information. So today we're going to be talking about more than journalism, the power of entertainment journalism. Now we all know, when a lot of people think of entertainment journalism, they think obviously movies, music, sometimes who's sleeping with who's dating who, but entertainment journalism should be more than that, right? It should be able to spark change, bring about dialogue that pushes the culture forward, just like we have movies like When They See Us, 13th, artists like Kendrick Lamar. That's how we use our gift in the biggest way, and a lot of the people here today are going to share their experiences with doing that. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and I'm going to join them on the panel. We're going to start with our first panelist. And mind you, I've known most of these for over a decade. We worked many red carpets right next to each other for so long, and I'm excited for them to share their wealth of knowledge today. So let's start with Ronda. Introduce them, tell them who you are and a few outlets that you've worked with.
I'm Racha Penrice. I've been doing this a long time. I currently write for NBC Black, sometimes AJC, sometimes AtlantaMagazine.com, The Hollywood Reporter. I am a Black culture expert, so I typically write about Black people, even when I do not write for Black publications. I am the author of Black American History for Dummies, as well as the editor of an anthology about The Wire called Cracking the Wire during Black Lives Matter. And I do a lot of diversity advocate work in this space, and I'm on the board of Black Women Film Network and the advisory council of the HBCU First Look Film Festival.
Let's give her a round of applause.
All right, I am A.R. Shaw. I am a journalist and author of the book Trap History, Atlanta Culture, and the Global Impact of Trap Music. Also done work with Ebony Magazine, Atlanta Daily World, The Guardian, Red Bull Magazine. So I've been featured in a lot of publications covering culture, art, sports, and you guys can check me out online. I've spoken to this class, to Professor Kim's class last semester, so definitely looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks. Hi, how are you guys doing today? Great to see you. I'm Janae Bolden. I am a journalist. I've been a journalist for about 20 years now. Don't let the baby face fool you. I currently contribute to Essence, Black Enterprise, Newsweek, The Hollywood Reporter, Variety. I started in digital media, worked with Bossip for about 15 years, as well as Global Grind. And now I have my own podcast called Hey Janae. It's on YouTube. Please subscribe. And I'll pass it along to my former colleague here.
Peace up. A-Town down. All right. Somebody, thank you, somebody. My name is Jason Lee. Please accept no substitutes. I'm just saying.
But
I'm just saying.
That was shade.
People in the streets call me Ja. I'm a senior editor at Bossip.com. I've been there for, I don't even know, 10, 15, 14 years. I worked as a digital producer for Charlamagne the God's TV show. The name turned a hell of a week. It started off as a God's Honest Truth. So I worked there for a couple of years while still writing at Bossip. Most of the stuff that I cover at Bossip has been entertainment-based, but a lot of it has been social justice things that are going on in politics, things that are going on, police brutality. And that's been my main beat now for about a decade. I'm right now currently also a recurring contributor on CNN. This morning, Weekend with Victor Blackwell. I appear with him on Saturdays and Sundays, a couple of times a month. So that's me.
Let's give them all another round of applause for their time today. Our first question, entertainment journalism can sometimes, like I was saying earlier, get dismissed as just gossip. So in your view, what is the true role and power of storytellers, whether they're journalists, filmmakers, or other creators, in shaping culture and advancing social justice?
The role of first role of journalism, a journalist, is to tell the truth, get the facts, tell the truth, be as objective as you can. But where the facts lead you, that's what you're required to say. That's what the job is to say what it is. As far as shaping culture, obviously journalists have the power of the pen, or in this case, the keyboard, and you're talking about narrative building. You're talking about storytelling, and sometimes we're telling stories that aren't getting the same coverage across the board in mainstream media and other places. So it's incumbent upon us to say this is what's important, and then explain to the audience why that's important. Even if your publication, if your outlet isn't maybe putting the resources behind this story that you think is important, you need to be able to explain that to your editor, to your boss, to your colleagues, and ultimately to the public, why this matters, how this affects them, how this can affect them in the future, how it affects them now, and kind of bringing them the context of things that have happened in the past that might be similar to whatever's going on right now.
Well, as someone, can you hear me? As someone who is a part, in this industry, you have to be a part of your culture that you're covering. Because a lot of times, if you're not keeping up on what's going on, you're gonna miss those big moments. So you won't know when something is happening because you haven't been paying attention. And a lot of times when it comes to covering Black people, even working at Black publications, in my experience as being an editor at 3 or 4 publications actually, and as a freelance writer, is that a lot of times you have other people setting our agenda. So it is important that we remain close to who we are serving and being aware of what we are doing and what the impact of this is.
So we talk about art and entertainment. Art and entertainment, they're like key to society, right? Storytelling, those aspects are important to, it represents who we are as people, right? It tells us where we've been, where we are right now, and where we're going in the future. And our job as journalists is to have an objective lens on art and culture, not falling into propaganda or things of that nature. We need to see what's happening, tell the truth, and also give individuals just the reality of what we're living in on a day-to-day basis. And so I think as journalists, we have an important job to document what's happening and really give a perspective that give your own perspective that may not be seen on the mainstream. And so I just think that everybody in this room, in some form or fashion, we're all storytellers, and so we have to understand that being storytellers, that we can use it as a tool or it can be used as a weapon.
Awesome, thank you. So entertainment is more than just escapism. It reflects, it challenges, and it shapes culture. Celebrities, artists, and influencers often hold more sway with young audiences than traditional politicians. How do you see entertainment humanizing social issues and inspiring change in ways politics often cannot?
I think that we've seen it a lot, especially in the elections, the past few election cycles. But it's throughout history as well. Like if you look at Muhammad Ali, for example, we have some of our greatest voices come often from people who are been told to shut up and dribble. So I think sometimes looking to celebrities or people who are not necessarily from the academic side of things or the political side of things, it has more impact because they reach a greater audience. So I think really using your platform for educating and shining a light is very important. I'm trying to think of an example of an artist. I know one thing in my work, I always try to challenge artists with the questions about social issues, because sometimes you would be surprised by what they'll say. I think people are often underestimating what our celebrities think, but they know, those that know their power, they understand, and we've seen it put to work through campaigns, political campaigns, but it's really one of the things I've enjoyed most about the job, it not being a straightforward entertainment, arts and entertainment space, but also having the ability to impact greater issues, whether we're talking about reproductive rights, voting rights, all types of issues. You know, Muhammad Ali keeps coming to mind because that's someone who I enjoy watching him, old documentaries and old films where you could see someone who was a figure, you know, from sports who became very active politically and was a great leader of our community.
I would say probably modern day, maybe Cardi B gets the attention of a lot of young adults, and even Kamala Harris brought her in when she was running.
Her, Megan Thee Stallion. I mean, there were quite a few, I think, women especially who were vocal about both voting rights as well as like how women are looked at. I think, you know, obviously the trends will change and the laws will change, but we always have to have those people to look to who can be change makers.
And the other thing that I'd probably add to that is that with entertainment, there's a fine line, right? You can do entertainment where the messaging is heavy-handed, or you can have entertainment that just paints the picture and lets the audience see what it is, and they go from there, right? And I think about Kendrick Lamar and All Right. Sure, there are things that he's saying in All Right that relate to us, relate to black people, relate to some of the social issues, but it's not an overtly political song. But that song turned into probably the biggest protest anthem that we'll have in this generation. And that was by the people deciding this is the song that represents. The words that he said resonated with us in a way that we took that and we made that into the chant that we say in the streets when we're going to protest these things. And even if he wasn't intending for that to happen, that's how powerful the art was.
Yeah. Or YG.
Or YG, yeah.
Well, I have to bring a historical lens into this. What we have to understand is that what we enjoy now in seeing a lot of our entertainers, sports figures and stuff being widely covered, it has not been the case. Yeah. So when we are talking about sports, when we are talking about acting, when we are talking about filmmakers, we have to be aware that even being those things and being in the public eye was a historical act. When we talk about sports, the reason that we see so many black men in particular in programs outside of our HBCUs is because when they were integrating these institutions, they were emissaries of race, politics, whether they wanted to be that or not. And when you watch a lot of older sports documentaries, there's one coming about a player at Duke that I actually saw the ad for it at the Human Rights Film Festival here on Saturday. So we have to be mindful that this medium, a lot of the rights even that we enjoy today, is because somebody could catch a ball and run faster and so forth. So when we are talking about these spaces, we are talking about spaces because of our status historically in this country, that whether we wanted them to be political or not, they were.
Yeah, and that makes me think about, there was a basketball player in the 90s. He was born Chris Jackson. He changed his name to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. He played for the Denver Nuggets. And he was essentially blackballed from the NBA for refusing to stand for the anthem. He sat down, and people were irate about that, and it cost him his career. People sacrificed for that. You don't get any of this stuff for free. It all costs something every single time. And what that costs, we don't get to determine that. It might cost you your life. It might cost you your job. It might cost you some money. That's what you sign up for when you decide to use your voice in those ways.
So representation matters. Media and storytelling can both reflect and challenge societal norms. How have you seen your work or the work of your peers shift representation in ways that change how audiences see themselves and their communities?
Yeah, so I started out as an editor, lifestyle editor at Rolling Out magazine, and this is during the years where a lot of, in terms of black culture, wasn't mainstream. So you didn't really see black stuff on NBC, CNN, or ABC. It was up to us, because most of us who's on this stage right now, we've worked and written for black publications. So it was up for us to really like tell those stories that ABC or NBC or CNN wouldn't tell. We would go places that they wouldn't go. And so it was important, just to have that authenticity of what's happening in these communities. And so I think it was definitely important for all of us to like really just have a foot in it and having a respect for the community as well. Because when people see you out, they have a respect for you and they see what you're producing. There's another form of respect. And so I definitely, being in corporate media, the checks are bigger, but a lot of times those voices are stifled and they can't really tell the truth because they have six or seven bosses ahead of them that's editing, what they're going to say, and they can't always say what's really happening. And so I think for us, it's been a privilege to be able to work for black publications and actually tell the truth about what's happening in our communities.
Well, I started a lot of my career working at a hip-hop magazine in the 90s. So a lot of times, when today, you guys enjoy seeing hip-hop kind of being integrated in all aspects. But when I was doing this work for Rap Pages, which is probably a name you never heard, but what you would see images of hip-hop culture were usually those of danger. It was extremely negative. And so through the work of people with the Source magazine, with publications like Blaze That Aren't Here, with Vibe and so forth, we were on the front lines of telling stories about this huge movement and mindset shift in our culture that wasn't even welcomed in mainstream black publications. So it was definitely, you knew that it was something special that you were covering, but also to be able to tell the elements outside of what the music is, to be able to bring in not just the things that impacted people, like Rap Pages, we did a cover, the famous photo at the Olympics of putting the fist up. We recreated that. We were always taking the cues from the things that impacted us that fed into the work that we did. And so you didn't get that full picture. And even now, a lot of times we don't get the full picture of what we know to be true as the audience and so forth. And it's so important for those of you who are here, when you're taking up this work, you have to see yourself as not just fulfilling what you think you want to do, but you are documenting a time and a period. And it is important that you pay attention to what is around you, because that becomes the record 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now.
I just wanted to add, I think just to balance out, since we're talking a lot about where we working in black media, some of my experiences working for mainstream media have really showed me how important representation is. I wrote a cover story on Offset for Variety magazine in 2023, I think April or May of 2023. They did not have a black writer on their staff in the music department to write this story. So their deputy editor reached out to me to share a byline with him. I did the research. I did the majority of the interview. I gained the trust of the artist. I still had to share a byline, which meant I didn't get paid as much for writing a cover story. I also had to fight tooth and nail for them to not use the word clout in the headline of the magazine. I had to fight repeatedly. Multiple emails, multiple conversations about why it wasn't appropriate to use the word. Just because he has a song called Clout, they thought it would be cheeky for that to be part of the headline of this man's first solo magazine cover story. So that's why representation matters, because they didn't even understand how disrespectful the term would be for our community. Why we probably wouldn't even want to read an article that is titled that way. They also wanted, at one point, I talked about Gucci's vouching for Migos and how that kind of helped them get on. And my editor changed Gucci Mane to just Mane, as if it's his last name.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't know. They didn't know we don't call him Mane.
Right.
I had to explain that.
Wow.
But there's no this is like a huge magazine. It's a big deal. Another example just happened this summer. Writing for Newsweek, my editor was listening to my podcast. I was in New Orleans this summer, and I was talking about how it's a big deal. It's the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. They had no coverage plans for the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. So he asked me, what would you like to write about to do that? So they ended up ultimately putting Hurricane Katrina 20 on the cover of that issue. And I wrote a story about how Studio B in New Orleans has their summer program for high school students, and they painted a mural on the lower Ninth Ward levee that broke, which created so much death and destruction in New Orleans. But that's a prime example of how having one Black person in position to tell, their editor that this is going on makes a big difference.
Well, you can't just be Black. You have to be a part of the culture, because
Well,
there
yeah,
are
that's
Black people that are in some of these positions, but they're not a part of the culture.
Yeah,
So let's unpack that a little bit, what you said. I'm so glad that you said that. So what is fighting for a byline? Because say, for example, many of them, they get an opportunity like that, and maybe they're afraid to go against who is, employing them. What does that look like to be bold and to do what you need to do to make sure it's correct?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I was afraid. This is my first cover story I'd ever written. It was a great opportunity. I wanted to please my editor, but at the same time, I literally had gained the trust of this artist. I had a relationship there as well, and often you will find yourselves in these positions where you're pulled between what your boss wants and then what the subject wants. And it's a delicate balance. But at the same time, I had to think about, what do I want for me? What's good for my career? Do I want my name under a headline that says clout on it? No. So I had to say no. And I tried to diffuse it with humor. Most of the conversation happened via text. So I was sending him memes. Like, he was like, how many times do we have to have this conversation? And I sent him a meme of the brat where she was counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to try to make it funny. But I'm not gonna stop fighting for it, because I don't want my name on something like that. I am part of the culture. I have to still go out into the community and see people. I go to events, and Offset might be there. I don't want him to be like, oh, there's the girl that wrote that bogus ass article about me. At the end of the day, like, I'm gonna tell the truth. I'm sure there were things I said that he didn't like, but that wasn't gonna be one of them.
And it's even deeper than that. Like, she got to see what the headline was. And a lot of times when you write for certain publications, they don't even send it back to you. And they make major mistakes. Like, I did an article recently where they identified somebody as a producer that I never identified as a producer of the project. And so there are errors all the time. And then you have certain publications, like for me, I'm very hesitant when I write for mainstream, and it's more important to me to be aligned with people who are going to respect and represent my work properly, because I have been, especially as a longtime freelancer, been at the other end of having something come out with your name on that an editor has gone and completely changed. And I don't talk to people under false pretenses. So if I'm coming to you and it's something controversial or whatever, I'm going to tell you outright. I'm not coming in and tricking you and getting certain answers and then taking and misrepresenting your words. And you have a lot of publications, especially when it comes to us, that this happens a lot. And the framework of some of the news and the framework in some of the news when it comes to covering Black people is from a spirit of negativity. It really is. And so you have to be very cognizant. And, lately, I've been throwing around, the line. It's an old line, but, Denzel from Highest to Lowest, all money ain't good money.
Yeah.
And that's like the truth. And you have to, and especially if you want longevity in what you do, you have to stand for something. You can't, like a lot of people, and if you're willing to, and I won't lie, if you're willing to sell out your community and be that opposite voice, your bank account is probably going to look better. But are you able to sit and be around your family, around your peers, and even look at yourself and be respectful? Because at the end of the day, you're betraying a culture and a whole lot of people who fought those fights without getting the reward, and you're participating in the undoing of that.
And I would say to the moral of, I think, the story that everyone is telling up here is, don't never assume that the publication or the outlet that you are a part of isn't culturally clueless. Don't assume that they know what it is. Don't assume that they understand what it is. And speaking to your point about being a part of the culture, you're only going to be able to voice those things if you're there, if you're actually part of what it is that you're writing about. And that's something that can't be taken for granted, because even if you do sell out and you do something, culture will keep you accountable, especially nowadays. If you write some BS, you're going to get a lot of responses on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram. People are going to do videos about what it is that you said, what it is that you portrayed, how you painted a picture. People are going to have something to say about that. You're not going to get your check and go quietly into the night. So, be cognizant of that as you're writing these things, as you're taking these assignments, as you're formulating your thesis.
I would just say, no matter what you say, there's going to be people who aren't going to like it. So you just go into this knowing that this isn't for the weak. Being a journalist is not for the weak at all. It's something, just go ahead and get ready to have to suit up and be strong. If you're going to tell the truth, just know that's what you got to do.
That's good. I like that. So movements like Black Lives Matter and Oscars So White have been fueled in part by coverage, community, and creative work. What role do you think journalists, filmmakers, and other creators play in sustaining these movements and pushing the conversation forward?
So it's interesting. I remember when all that came about in terms of using hashtags to create social movements, and we gotta put it, be truthful about it. The Black community was the first to use social media as a way to create movements, right? And now we're seeing it done. We've seen it done on all aspects where different organizations or communities are using hashtags to create these movements. But I think for us, and particularly for journalists, is to really understand what those movements mean and really bring stats to it, right? So when you say Oscars So White, what does that really mean? So I know Ronda, Janae, y'all cover Hollywood a lot.
Yeah.
So what does it mean in terms of who's getting these opportunities to direct, to write, to be on a production aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
For the production part of a movie or a TV set, how does that look in terms of diversity? What do those numbers look like? And also when you talk about Black Lives Matter, when we had social media, it was the first time that people actually saw the violence being perpetuated to Black people in real time, right? We saw the Rodney King beating in the 90s, but it wasn't.
Kind of sparked it.
Yeah, kind of sparked it. But with social media, it was oh, this happens all the time in different communities in different cities, right? And so it sparked a movement where it's there is disparities when it comes to fairness and social justice and criminal justice, right? So I think our job as journalists is to really get to the numbers in terms of what are the in terms of who's when it comes to police brutality, who's the main culprit in these communities? What do those numbers look like? Who's being shot? It's up to us to really tell that story. And so I think when those hashtags came alive, when they became movements, as journalists, it was up to us to really give context to what those movements actually mean.
That's good.
I was thinking Ida B. Wells as well. Like if you think of the tradition that was started there of keeping records, and I think this is just a modern day version of that. Like taking the social media and distilling it, breaking it down, and using the hashtag just to get the attention of it. I know for Bossip, working there for 15 years, we use those hashtags in our headlines all the time. And the headlines got us in the New York Times, but making sure that we were letting people know right away, we're talking about this subject by mobilizing those headlines. I mean, the hashtags.
And specifically, there's things that go viral and there's things that don't go viral, right? And I think about the Ahmaud Arbery case a lot. And when you look at the Ahmaud Arbery case, those white men were about to get away with it. They were about to get away with it. It was not going to be a viral thing. It was not going to be a story. It was not going to be a hashtag. It was not going to be any of that. Right. They were about to skate free, essentially lynching a man in public on video camera, and nobody was going to do anything about it. And without social media, without journalists, without, Bossip and other sites that made this thing really loud, there was going to be nothing that happens. It was just going to go as just somebody else who died, and people in that town in South Georgia would be screaming and mad about it and might not ever be heard. So these things do have real life consequences if used correctly. You can directly impact how social justice happens, how criminal justice happens, how people are held into account.
And also, when you're covering like a lot of film and television, there are references often in the films and the TV shows that we consume. Like even with When They See Us, I was in New York during that time, and people on the streets knew that these young boys did not commit this crime. So even again, being a student of what's going on around you, observing, because I promise you the things that are big and unstated now, there will be a time when your knowledge and your personal experience of those times will come into play, and bringing contacts like people are saying is very essential, because even when you're consuming something that is an artistic thing, you have to, like for me, I'm a researcher, so I'm gonna go and research because I was in academia, and so everything that I write has a basis to it. And so those things are very important, like accuracy really matters. But also going to the sources that people don't think are reputable. Like if I'm writing about something that's popular, even with a TV show, I'm gonna go to social media and see what people are saying, because part of my job is also being on the pulse of what is actually going on, and not just be a bubble in myself and think that what I think is what the story is. And that's one of the most important things that you have to do, is get beyond what it is that you think. Because there are things that are popular that you may think is dumb, but then when you go, you have to ask yourself, well, why is this popular? What's really going on that is pushing this forward? And that even means when we talk about social movements and the power that we're living in now with social media, because back in the day when Ferguson went down, the traditional narrative was like, oh, nothing's happening here. But if you were watching, if you were on Twitter in the time of Periscope, and people were in real life, like real time, showing you what was going down, that changed all of the conversation on the CNNs, on the ABCs. But before, it would have never happened. So don't doubt your power even right now.
What Ronda's really talking about is being objective, though. Like at the end of the day, like you have to seek out secondary sources. You can't just rely on what one person tells you. You got to talk to 2, 3, 4. Sometimes, like I think some of it for me is so intuitive, and just knowing what you know when you can stop because you've gotten enough of a full picture of it. But the big thing I would say to all of you is make sure you're tapped into your intuition. You're going to get gut feelings. There's a story there. Or this is what the story actually is. As a journalist, like it's one of the biggest tools that you can use is your gut instinct.
So that takes us to definitely our next question. So films like When They See Us, The Hate You Give, obviously if artists like Kendrick, like we mentioned, show the power of entertainment platforms. It inspires change. What role do journalists and creators play in amplifying those cultural moments?
So it's interesting you mentioned Kendrick. So I covered the Super Bowl. I cover most Super Bowls. So I was in New Orleans when Kendrick did his halftime performance, and I remember just like the moments after the performance, like nobody knew what was happening, right? And so just because we're in the media, we're in the press box, and so you gotta understand with press boxes, it's not many people that look like me. so I was trying to explain. I was telling the other journalists, look, you're gonna have to watch this another time. You have to watch it about 3 or 4 times to get it. Mm-hmm. Kendrick, what he did with the Super Bowl was he told the story of America in a way that was so subversive that you had to really pay attention to it to really understand what he was saying. It was almost a game within the game, and using the football field to almost point a finger at America, like this is what's happening in our country. And so I think as journalists, the way I looked at it was like, all right, let me break this down and what this actually means to the grand scheme of things, with Trump being at the Super Bowl and seeing what's happening and seeing that Kendrick is basically using Samuel L. Jackson, Morehouse grad, shout out to Samuel, using Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle Sam and telling you, stop, don't go there, don't do this, stay in line, and what happens when you get out of line. And so, when you have an artist like a Kendrick, I think it's great for journalists to actually kind of break down what he's actually saying, because Kendrick is not going to really talk and tell you what he's saying. He's just going to put it out there. I think it's up to us to kind of break down what those things actually mean, what those symbols mean to the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, to not even to some extent, as journalists, as writers, as creators, people who are involved in the culture, you are the translators. You are the translators to all of America, to all the people who are watching, listening, sharing. You are translating these things that are happening, that are spoken in a language that maybe everyone doesn't understand. But again, it goes back to the point I was making earlier about you have to explain to them why this is important. Sure, we would love to live in a world where people just look at things and get it, or people look at things and they feel the emotion behind it and they understand it. That's not always going to be the case. And yeah, Kendrick is not going to break down syllable for syllable what he was talking about, what he meant in each decision that he made and those type of things. But that's where it's incumbent upon all of us to make that clear. It's not that you're speaking for Kendrick Lamar, but if you understand the culture at a certain level, you understand the music at a certain level, you understand history at a certain level, you can find ways to articulate that thing to your audience.
And as a historian, what was so great about that is seeing on social media people lift a picture of him wrapped in the flag and put Langston Hughes' I Too Sing America on it, because it shows you the through lines of what's happening now to what's happened decades before. And also with social media, those posts are able to embolden some of the black journalists that are in white outlets, because now they can point to concrete examples from people who are real, people, and use that to argue with their editors and get certain pieces done, greenlit, that would not have been there before.
It's interesting that we're using Kendrick as an example. When the Grammy night happened and he was winning Grammy after Grammy for Not Like Us, and my editor said, can you do something about how it's kind of messed up that this incendiary song is winning all these Grammys? Wow. And I was like, I actually can't, but if you find someone to write that, I'm happy to write the opposite point of view. And she was like, well, I just need something. So if you want to write that, go ahead. So I ended up writing something pro Kendrick for Grammy coverage, but it was like shocking to hear that being called incendiary, even though. But it's like if you don't have an understanding of what was going on at the time, that's maybe how you happen to see it.
I had a specific question for you, Janae, and you kind of led into it. So
okay.
You've written for outlets like obviously Essence, Ebony, and Variety with different audiences. So how do you adjust your coverage, or do you adjust your coverage to honor those audiences while still highlighting the cultural and social impact of entertainment stories?
I don't adjust much, to be honest with you. I think it depends. If there's a column that has like a certain style that it's written in, I might adjust the style, but my tone I've never adjusted it that much differently for audiences. Even when I was writing for Bossip, I still would use SAT words, because I want my audience to work on their vocabulary. I want them to understand if that's the appropriate word, I'm gonna use the appropriate word. So I really, the only thing I would say that I keep in mind differently is, like, for example, I interviewed Montel Jordan recently about his prostate cancer battle. And it's a very male disease, male topic, et cetera. But this is, I also wanted to keep in mind, I'm covering it for Essence. So I wanted to know how his family and how his wife had supported him through. So that was kind of maybe the one way that I would adjust my lens for it. And then, for example, with the Variety coverage or with Hollywood Reporter coverage, you have to spell things out more, to contextualize them, because you do have people who don't understand the full picture. Even like what I was saying, like they might just be looking at it, oh, Kendrick is like really incendiary on this song, but no, his response is perfect for the way he was meeting the situation. So let's look at the full picture and not just, look at this as an isolated thing.
And I think as a freelance writer, though, you have to be mindful of what outlets you're writing for. So, like, if I'm writing for an Atlanta magazine, then I know that they're going to be interested in the Atlanta details that a national publication would not.
Yeah, you want to keep the perspective in mind of your audience, but at the same time, for me, no, I don't have to adjust much as far as the voice.
Amir, in Trap History, that's the name of his book, you explore Atlanta's trap music movement and its global reach. What did writing that book teach you about the role of entertainment journalism and documenting cultural movements before they're fully recognized by the mainstream?
Yeah, I think that was definitely important for me to really document that moment, because I realized that I'm gonna give you an interesting story. So I was in London covering the Olympics. And when I was over there, they were telling us about. I was talking to some of the individuals who live in London. They were telling me about trap night. They was talking about trap music, and I was like, wow. And this was before trap music became almost like what it is today. And me being an Atlanta native, I was like, I don't think the mainstream is really documenting what's happening and what it actually means. And so it was like, all right, I'm already interviewing all of these individuals that's making that's in the scene, like a T.I., like a Gucci, like a Jeezy. Interviewed them countless amount of times, and I was like, nobody's actually giving context to what trap is. You just see trap yoga and trap karaoke, but do the average person who's singing trap karaoke know about the Bluff? Have they even walked down the Bluff? And the Bluff is like a few blocks away from here. So I went to the Bluff, and I wanted to separate the artistry of trap music to what the trap really is, and what happens with addiction, what happens with mental health issues, what happens when you have a lack of resources in these communities. And so that was important for me to take it, to approach it from a journalistic standpoint, and not just hype up the music, but also really shed a light on what was happening within these communities. That's still happening within these communities today. You can still go to the Bluff and they're exchanging needles. There's still addiction in these areas. And so that's really the most important part, is like when you're doing entertainment, when you're doing, go beyond the surface. Don't just talk about the artistry of it, what inspired the art. And I think that's the biggest thing that we have to do as journalists, is really understand what inspired that art.
That's great.
So back to London, tell me more about that. Wait, what were they doing with trap? Did they understand?
Well, yeah. They just had like a thing. They had like a trap night theme where they would just.
And it was American artists?
No, it was London.
What were the artists though? Or they were just playing?
Trap artists there?
No, it was just a night at a club where they would play trap music.
Trap music.
So it was called Trap Night. But it was in London, so I'm just like, wow, like it kind of
So they had trap music in London.
in London, yeah. So it was just, yeah, yeah. But see,
No, but I'm just saying, like, because typically they might have a different genre, or they call it something else. Like it might be drum and bass, or it might be drill, or whatever.
yeah, they have a London version of drill and a
Yeah.
London, and they also
Their
have
drill
grime.
ain't our
It ain't our drill, so it is. Yeah, so she's right. So
That's
there,
what I see.
yeah, she's right. So there's different.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
There's different subcultures in different places that take, and even like with trap, they got Latin trap, and Bad Bunny is
I
considered.
did not know that.
Bad Bunny is considered Latin trap.
And like over there, like when you talk about London hip hop, like they're talking about grime. They call it the grime artist, and grime is a whole nother. You could say that it's, I guess, related to rap in the sense of the artists are rapping, and they're rhyming words at a certain kind of pace, but the music and the aesthetic is totally different than what they would call garage or what they would call hip hop. A rapper in London doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to them as it means to us, even if they're doing similar things.
The more you know. Okay. So art shapes culture, and culture shapes policy. If you have a mic, a camera, a stage, or a screen, you have influence, right? What responsibility comes with that influence, and how do you ensure your work builds awareness and legacy instead of just visibility?
I mean, your responsibility is to tell the truth and have the facts to back it up. We were talking about earlier about separating yourself from your opinion and what's actually going on out there. If you're going to make a statement, if you're not even necessarily a headline, but if your piece is predicated on whatever the idea is, you need to have some real hard evidence to be able to say, this is why I feel like that, not just because I said so, or because I feel like that, or because I saw this one anecdotal thing that happened means that this is the overarching, that's just not how it is. There might be things that surprise you. I mean, nowadays, we get music through streaming. If you look at the top streaming artists, I'm sure there's at least 10 of the top 20 or 30 artists you've never heard of a day in your life. But people all over the place are listening to this music. It might not be in your face, but it's in somebody's face. It's in somebody's life. So knowing about those things, I think, is your responsibility. But it's mostly, I think, just facts and having a grounded perspective that you are approaching whatever the subject is.
I think what you're talking about too is credibility, right? So even if you look at the title of the panel, so one reason that entertainment journalism gets a bad name is because of tabloids. So you have tabloids. I think it was a big battle, for me at Bossip, making sure we were a credible website, because we were lumped in with like Media Takeout or other places where they were literally tabloids where they were making up stories about people. And I think that's something you have to think about, because of course, if you have these like wild, crazy stories, you're going to get the attention, you're going to get the clicks. But if they're not credible, you end up facing lawsuits or other types of situations we've seen with Tasha K, for example. You can end up with a defamation suit. You can end up with the libel suit. If you're using photography that you're not getting the rights for, that's a whole nother lawsuit. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes with the attention, and the more attention you get, the more likely that you could, if you say something that's not true and not credible, you can end up in some legal trouble and financially impacted.
I think we see that a lot in these days with podcasters. Just because you have a mic doesn't mean you have the authority and the knowledge to handle that visibility. Okay, well, Jason, this next question is for you. Hold on. So you work behind the scenes on Charlemagne the God's Honest Truth, which often tackle political issues. How did that experience shape your perspective on blending entertainment and politics in media?
Well, the interesting part about that is that because I covered what I covered in Bossip with the social media the social justice stuff and things that are going on in politics, I was kind of already grounded in what the voice of the show wanted to be when it comes to some of those topics. Now, obviously, Charlemagne is going to do his Charlemagne thing, right? And he wants to be comedic. Obviously, it was a late night talk show. So the idea was to be comedic, but it was also to make a point. And, you know, satire is a powerful literary tool of writers, creators. And so, but there's a fine line, right? You don't want to satirize something to the point that it's a joke, that the whole thing is a joke now, that you become a parody of yourself. You want to be able to make jokes that are impactful because there's a fundamental truth in it that touches a nerve, that strikes a certain message that you're trying to get across. So I was kind of already prepared for kind of what that experience would be like. I was about, I don't know, 5 or 10 feet away from him when he was recording the Kamala Harris interview that went very viral because he asked some very pointed questions that were direct questions that weren't even jokes. And essentially, her handlers didn't want to go down that path and they tried to shut down the interview. And without giving too much information, there was a long conversation after that taping between Charlemagne, our executive producer, Kamala Harris, and her campaign lead about what was going to stay in and what was going to come out and how it was going to be presented. And ultimately, the decision was made that we're keeping everything in. It's all going to stay just as it was. When you came into the camera and tried to stop the interview and block the camera and try to talk to her and all, we kept all that in the show because that's how it happened. And these weren't gotcha questions. These weren't trick questions. These weren't questions that were meant to demean Vice President Harris. But these are just hard questions that any politician should be ready to answer. And your team being uncomfortable with them is not a metric by which we were going to decide, does this qualify for going on air? Yes, it all goes on air, and it is what it is. You could have either answered the question, or you could have went the way you went, and you decided to go that way. So it just is what it is.
So, Ronda, this question is for you. You've also contributed to The Hollywood Reporter. I think three of us, me, Ronda, and all three of us have contributed to The Hollywood Reporter, a leading voice in the entertainment industry. From your perspective, how can outlets like THR push coverage of Black culture beyond surface-level entertainment into deeper cultural critique?
Well, it comes down to you. Most of the time when you see my name, it's because I fought for that story. It's not because somebody called me or emailed me and pitched me a story. It's because I am watching things and I'm like, oh, well, I'm rocking with this and so forth. Like for The Hollywood Reporter, I did a interview when Power Book 2 Ghost ended with Michael Rainey Jr., who is someone they would not have have spoken to. My editor was like, oh my God, this story was like one of our top stories for the week, because from their lens and what they are paying attention to, because we all have our personal taste and so forth. Like, you know, a lot of the younger people I know, they're really into anime. I don't know anything about it. So if I was an editor, I'd have to pay attention to that because it's not my sphere of expertise. But like even with the Gilded Age, originally The Hollywood Reporter was going to do maybe a story on it. And I was like, no, this is like the best season they've ever had. So I ended up doing 10 stories on it. Then the same thing if you saw the Aaron Hernandez. I became the Aaron Hernandez whisperer because I was the only one that was watching it. And then there are certain things like I have a friend, someone I met like almost 10 years ago, who now on Beyond the Gates, the luxury bags that are the Chelsea Cat brand are her actual brands. So I pitched her to several things, and I pitched her over the years, and somebody said yes. And so when I'm talking about being observant of what's going on around you, a lot of the things will not be unless you make them.
Your curiosity needs to lead.
And you have to listen also, like, a lot of times when people do stories, and this is my observation because I didn't go to journalism school, I did not take journalism classes and so forth. I started out in this industry as a book reviewer. I was an English and history major. I always observed things. I've loved television since I was 3 years old. That is my medium. And because of being a vocal person, other people would say to me, oh, you need to write that down. And as I started doing that, and even like a lot of the jobs I got early on was from being helpful to other people because I had a knowledge base and I was willing to share that. And so, but so many people, like especially, I think it's eased up a little bit, but when I would be in rooms with trained journalists, they would often come in that this is the story. And so they'd have these questions that they were gonna ask, and we see it even on TV, like where they're talking to people and the person will say something and they'll come back to the question they really want answered instead of listening. When you do interviews with people, if you listen to people, you will break stories and not just report them.
Bars.
I just want to I don't want to divert too far away from journalism, but something that you said was something that I did want to mention about being helpful to people, building these relationships. Even in doing research and even in having a gut feeling and even going with your journalistic integrity and your own point of view, you're going to need people. You're going to need resources. You're going to need to be able to pick up the phone and send an email, call somebody, and get some information that either confirms, denies, whatever it is. You're going to need people. You're going to need a web of people that you can call a network of people you can call in various places to be able to get some of this information. So please, please, please build your relationships. Keep them good. Be honest with people. That's not to say they have to like everything that you say or that you write about, but please build those relationships so that when it's time to make a phone call, you can call that person, they'll pick up the phone, they'll hit you back, whatever it is, but they want to help you because you've been helpful to them, hopefully.
And don't just, like, a lot of people, especially when you talk about entertainment journalism, people want to only talk to the stars. Your job is also to identify who's coming up. So trust and believe when this person blows up and you were the person on the ground level who saw that talent. Like one time, like before, even though he had been doing it a long time, but when I used to write for The Root, I had a relationship with a publicist who wanted me to do a story on Courtney B. Vance when they did the OJ series. Well, when I get shows, I watch the whole show. So I don't just watch a few episodes. I usually get a whole show. So I watched, and I told my editor, I said, this dude that's playing Christopher Darden, like, he's amazing. Like, I don't know if he'll get nominated for an Emmy, but I really think that we should cover him. And so I went after him, not knowing that Sterling K. Brown was going to get nominated for an Emmy or that This Is Us was coming. But you have to look and observe and know that something is here. And I also wanted to say, we've talked about social movements and stuff, but also realize when you're looking at entertainment and you see themes of Black love resonating, that those are stories too. Everything doesn't require a march and
trauma,
sign
right,
in order to matter to us.
So where am I? Many stories in entertainment are designed to grab attention, drive clicks, or sales. How do you balance that demand with the responsibility to create work that also informs, holds power accountable, like what Jason was just talking about, and spark meaningful conversations?
So that's an interesting balance because you don't want to get to the point where you're talking to yourself. As journalists, you don't want people to start tuning you out, right? So you really have to understand how to grab people's attention early on. You really got like three, if you're talking, you like 5 to 10 seconds. If you're writing, maybe like the first sentence. So you really have to capture people really quick. And so that's the balance that we always have as journalists, is to really keep people engaged and to make them want to be a part of what we're producing. So I think you really have to pay attention to that, because you don't want to get to the point where you're not resonating with the reader or the listener. The whole purpose of what we're doing is to convey messages and to reach people. And if you're not reaching people, it's not working. So you gotta, it's an old saying, startle me. And so when you're creating, pieces of work, try to find things that's going to startle people. And you don't have to go out of bounds with it. Not saying that you have to, go to the extreme of getting attention, but you have to find ways to grab people early on. And so, as journalists, that's something that we always deal with on a day-to-day basis. Every single story that we write, every podcast, we have to find ways to keep people engaged. And in a sense, it's entertainment as well. So we can entertain and educate at the same time. But you have to find ways to make people want to pay attention to you.
Yeah, and nowadays we live in this attention economy, and attention is like a dirty word now, to where when you say attention, or to your point about clout, it's like it makes it seem as if you only got attention because you told a lie, or you only got attention because you said something crazy that maybe you don't even believe. But you can capture people's attention with a lot of things. Emotion is attention. Jokes, humor can garner attention. A hard truth. If you're taking the time to write a story that you've researched, presumably you're writing this because you think it's important. What important thing do you want people to know right off the top that they're not thinking about? That should be, if you can't identify that in the story, then you might need to reconsider whether you have a strong basis for this thing in the first place. Because there should be something in there that says, this is going to make you bust out laughing. This is going to make you your heart hurt. This is going to make you say, wait, that's a real thing? Like, that's what you're looking for in all of these stories. So I don't think you need to lie. You don't need to say anything crazy. You don't need to make a spectacle out of yourself. You just need to identify that truth and present that to the public initially, so that they understand what it is they're about to read, or why they need to be reading what you're writing.
Janae, can you talk about that? Because headlines is so important.
I mean, he could talk about it too. I work with Ja for 14 years, and he's one of the best headline writers we had on staff. I'm not ashamed to say it. Like, we were, like I mentioned in my introduction, that our headlines got us in the New York Times. People love the Gossip headlines, and that was when I was under so much pressure as a managing editor to get the clicks up, to continue to grow the website, and that's where the tabloid headlines came from. Because we started out doing tabloid style. Of course, the content was still credible, but the tabloid style, which was like making them catchy, it was stopping people in their tracks. So they have to like see what this story is about. We added alliteration, onomatopoeia, like all of the literary devices went into these headlines, and it was a challenge. I think we were competitive amongst the team, to who had the best headlines of the day, or even who had the best headlines of the year. It became a tentpole at the end of the year, where we had our top 10 headlines of the year. But it also was great because, as Ronda was talking about, like the historical markers, you could look at the headlines and you would find that the top ones were actually historical markers of things that had happened, whether in pop culture or actual social, the social climate. The headlines were indicative of that. We always had the strongest ones. We knew when certain situations happened, like we would know, and the social media would be clamoring for them. Where is the Gossip headline about, this situation, whether it was Cat Williams going on Shannon Sharp, or what was another one that people were, the election, obviously.
The election was a big one. When the CEO of Goya came out as a Trump supporter, and like people were outraged about it. Like people were definitely hitting us up. Like they already knew what the news was. They weren't looking for the news anymore. They wanted to see our perspectives. They wanted to hear what we were going to say about it. And that's ultimately what that's the attention that I'm talking about, where we didn't have to lie in these headlines. We didn't have to say anything crazy. We just had to make it funny or interesting or said in a way that the way that we talk as a culture. MSNBC, CNN, the Washington Post, all of them were going to write about the election. All of them were going to say Joe Biden won or whatever the thing was. But that wasn't what people were coming to us for. They wanted to hear exactly how you were going to say it. And like that was a thing that really kind of fueled our readership, because we became known for that thing. And it was important for people to see it and spread it. It wasn't just like, haha, I think that's funny. They wanted their friends to see it, their families to see it, their group chats to see it. And that's the kind of attention and engagement that you're kind of looking for when you're writing something that has some power behind it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, don't be afraid to be a nerd about this. Like, we're here because we're lovers of the word, right? We all love words. Like, I don't know about y'all, but I love to read at a really young age. So, like, writing, don't be ashamed. Like, don't just try to say it and be subtle about it. Like, be bold with it. As I think Amir was saying, the opening is so important. Having a strong opening, a hook that catches and pulls people in, and then you want to maintain consistency, whether you're like doing an envelope structure. There's so much to love about this genre, like working in this industry. And if you are a lover of the word, you're in absolutely the right field, and there's so much power in it. You can do so much with it.
So make sure you guys are getting your questions together, because soon, in about 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes, we're going to have you come up for our Q&A to have your questions. And I hope you're taking some amazing notes, because they are dropping all the gems that you can use now to accelerate your career. So Janae, you've interviewed icons from Denzel to Tracee Ellis Ross, and even challenged Young Thug on police brutality. How do you see the role of journalists in moving interviews from beyond promotion into meaningful cultural dialogue?
I think, first of all, you just have to be who you are. So I think the things that I've talked to different celebrities about are generally things that I'm interested in, and it's all varied. So obviously, when you're interviewing Denzel, most of the time you had to go past so many gatekeepers that there's a topic that they really want to make sure you're hitting on. But you should also do your research and know what he actually wants to talk about. So when it came to Denzel, I was there to talk to him about Gladiator 2. But I knew he cared about August Wilson. So that's what I talked to him about, and that's what he, enjoyed talking about. For Tracee Ellis Ross, she's been, obviously you guys see the curly hair. She's been a hair icon for me. So I made sure I was having a great hair day when I got on that Zoom to talk to her. And right away, she was, oh my God, we didn't even get into the interview. She was calling her intern to get my address to send me pattern products, which was great, but it let her guard down, and we were able to get into that interview. And there's different pieces of it that make the interview even better, because you're able to tap into things besides the subject at hand. For Young Thug, that was tough. I went viral for asking him if something had to be changed about the way that Black men are policed in America. I don't know if y'all have y'all seen the clip of how he responded? He said, that's a question for the critics and the laws. We iced out, we turning up. Hello? Did you hear the question, sir? He was high out his mind. We were on the red carpet of the BET Hip Hop Awards, and I got the opportunity to ask him the questions I wanted to ask because his publicist trusted me. Oops. I wasn't trying to catch him. I thought he was going to say something intelligent. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I don't know why. but I'm used to my hip hop artists being able to answer a serious question. And there was plenty of other artists on that carpet that day that I asked the very same question. And I got a great response out of Kevin Gates. I got a great response out of Big Gip. I got a great response even out of Boosie. So the fact that happened with Young Thug, I'm not trying to be shady. I love Jeffrey. I love him for real. I do. But I just think you just being yourself is going to get you so far, and it's actually going to open up different stories, as Ronda was kind of talking about. Like, it's not always the story that's right in front of you. And even with that answer, he said all that. I had no intention of using it. My producer knew we had gold as soon as he said that. I was more interested in, I asked him about Kevin Gates, and they were beefing at the time, and he answered it. I thought that was the story. The internet told me differently. So sometimes you're not even gonna know what's gonna catch or work for you, but by being yourself, you're gonna get these great stories that come out of it.
And I wanted to talk about with editors, because when I had sat down with T.I. when Tyler Perry opened his studio, so I was like into that. I was there for, what's the Netflix show?
Rhythm and Flow?
Yeah, Rhythm and Flow. And so I asked him about female rappers, because I knew he used to have his own little down south salt and pepper and so forth. And he started talking about Iggy Azalea. And so my editors, I put it in the story, and they were like, no, the Iggy Azalea thing is what's really, the draw, and they were right.
Unfortunately.
Well, he knew it was a blunder. Like, he knew it was a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking at the time because I want to leave plenty of time for you guys to ask questions. So, Ronda, your career spans journalism and history with work in more than 50 outlets. That's amazing, first of all, 50 outlets.
You do it a long time,
How did you bring historical context into your coverage so that entertainment stories also reflect legacy and social impact?
Well, when you work early on, when you started out in more like legacy printed media, for a lot of times when I was when I was working at Rap Pages, everybody wants to cover the artist. Everybody wants to do that, but real things happen in the world. So when there was a guy, James Byrd, who was dragged to death, and 50-something pieces of his body were left along the road. That came to me because I was the person who had the historical background. So, and whereas other people covered it, we actually got a call from, I don't know if you heard of Larry Flint, but he owned Rap Pages. And we got a call, my editor got a call because of that story. And I said, you got a call because unlike other people who said the dragging death, I went into the details and I let you know how many pieces of his body was found. And so it is defaulted on me because of the knowledge that I had. I took over, I would do the books because I was a book reviewer. I came from this publication called Quarterly Black Review of Books. And, so it just fell on me. So when I was at Upscale Magazine, when it was the anniversary of the Haitian Revolution, they know that Ronda does historical research. When I wrote about when Beyonce did Beychella, a lot of people just did Feminist. I did a story about reclaiming Southern hip hop, representing HBCU culture, and all of that, and really grounding her in her Texas background. So a lot of times, and everybody has a gift. Like I wanted to say, the thing about this industry is don't think that what you're interested in precludes you from being a writer. Because you can have you have an interest in hair, right? Now those people need to be covered too. Mm-hmm. I worked at Upscale. It was built by a black hair empire, So everything that you're interested in, you got people who cover skateboarders for a living. You got people who cover surfers. What you are interested in, whatever your expertise is, lean into that. And my expertise happens to be Black history and culture.
I'm going to add to that. But yeah, being a subject matter expert is definitely important, and it allow you to carve your own lane. Particularly when the YSL trial first started, because I've written trap history, the only book that's about trap music. A lot of mainstream outlets were hitting me up, like ABC News, NBC, NPR, BBC. They were all hitting me up about particularly the aspect of rap lyrics being used in court. in terms of, the First Amendment right. And just me doing the research before years before the trial even took place, it was, I discovered that when it came to art being used in court, that we only, for the most part, saw rap lyrics being used in court, where you didn't see, other art being used to convict criminal cases. And so I pretty much gave, a foundation of that in terms of, is it okay, even if the rapper is admitting to a crime on record, is it okay to use what was said on record in a criminal conviction? And so that was one piece that pretty much a lot of mainstream corporations, a lot of mainstream media outlets were trying to look to in terms of just kind of getting an insight on that and how rap lyrics and how rappers pretty much present their art, and should there be a separation between the art and the actual, what they're actually, the crime that they're being accused of.
And if you came up, when I came up, a lot of these people lying on wax anyway, so.
Right.
Okay. We have 2 more questions, and we're going to start the Q&A. So these are student-focused questions. So every project doesn't have to carry a social justice message, right? But when students see change is needed, how can they use their craft to spark dialogue, awareness, or impact?
I think you just have to start where you are. I think the biggest thing is because your superpower is that no one is your age at this time, right? So we can't really tell you all what's happening right now, because we don't know what it is to be your age right now and what's happening in these subcultures that's happening, these trends that's happening. And so I would lean into that right now if I were you all. I would create my own platform right now if I were all of you all. I would have my own podcast. I would have my own blog or own newsletter. I would try to figure out my own way right now to kind of build my voice and really just tell the stories that's around me, like what's happening on the campus of Morehouse or Spelman or Clark or Morris Brown, like what's really going on right now. And I think you have to really lean into that, because there's no one who's experiencing what you're experiencing right now. So there's people who are trying to figure out what's happening in Morehouse, who live in California, who live in China. There's a significance to where you are right now. Take advantage of that and really lean into that and tell those stories that's happening amongst your peers. And I think if you use that, I think that would kind of give you the leg up on what you're doing now, what you're going to do next.
And I would add, don't forsake your media on campus. Write for the Maroon Tiger. Like, these are publications that have been in existence for decades and decades. And then as you get into the industry, what you will find out is that some of the people who are veterans, if they came to Morehouse, they came through the Maroon Tiger, and you will instantly be able to build community.
I think it's important also about what Amir was saying, is to build your own media outlet, because I never worked for a mainstream outlet. I built my own because I saw a lack of the type of stories that I wanted to see. I wanted to see more positive stories in the industry, because I just didn't see any among the people I was around. I wanted to cover faith, culture, and style. And over 15, 20 years I did that, which still led to editors and writers at the Hollywood Reporter contacting me and say, hey, can you cover the grand opening of Tyler Perry Studios for the Hollywood Reporter? Absolutely and absolutely. And the access that comes when you're covering something for the Hollywood Reporter, I was able to see the day and the night. It's very different access, because on that red carpet, when the carpet was over, a lot of the local outlets like the ABC and the local CBS and ABC local outlets, they left. But I was thinking, hey, okay, it's time to go into the party to walk to do that. They was like, oh, we're done. I was like, oh. But I wasn't done. I was thankful that I wasn't, because it allowed me to go in to actually walk and look at the stages. And Beyonce is literally walking. Everyone's just casually walking, admiring Will Smith. Everyone just admiring what's going on. And I think I was the only media outlet allowed in, I think, was the Hollywood Reporter and Essence Magazine. We had our table. They had nameplates. It was huge. And that can come from you starting your own outlet using your voice, because the word is going to go out that you have a voice, that you're saying something different that other outlets are not saying, and you'll be surprised how even further it can take you by just starting your own thing.
And I think the fine point, I guess, that I would put on all of that is that don't discount your own voice. There have been journalists, activists, all types of people who are your age and were met with resistance from some of the highest offices in America. You think about Fred Hampton. Like, he was a very young man when he was doing what he was doing, and he was ultimately killed doing what he was doing. And he wasn't a 35, 40-year-old person with all of this life experience as far as age goes. He was just somebody using his voice, saying what he believed to be true and spreading his message. And so your voice is powerful at whatever time you decide to use it. So don't discount that. Take that for what it is. You can be the person who breaks a story right now. You can find out some information and get a call from CNN or MSNBC because you created this, you broke this story, you break this information to the public that wasn't previously known. All the things that are around you are all tools and all resources, and you all have the power to be whatever person you look up to. You can be that person right now.
And also use use your tools that's happening today, that's available today. So back when we were in college, we didn't have what y'all have, right? Streaming is big. Try to figure out how to use streaming in a way where you can, put some type of journalistic in it, right? Because streaming is like huge. But 10 years ago, there was no streaming. There was no Casanats, but now you all can create your own streaming platforms, educate your communities, and you do it in a journalistic manner. So I think you should use the whatever you see that's happening right now. Like I said, create a podcast. Just use what's available, because before this movement now of technology, you actually had to get a job from a corporate company. You had to go to an AJC. You had to go to a CNN to get a job. Now you can create your own job, and so collaborate as much as possible. You don't have to be a solo entrepreneur. Collaborate, get your friends together, and say we're gonna build a media outlet. So just think outside the box. And I think you all living in a time where you can go straight to consumer and you don't have to wait.
Yeah, the gatekeepers are gone. There's nobody at the door. Y'all can run straight up in there and do what you see fit to do. There's nobody standing in the way. There's no one you have to get permission from. None of that. So yeah.
And also, again, to expound on build a community among yourselves, because through talking to other people that do this, you may have done something you don't even think is a story idea, and then you talk to one of your colleagues and they're like, oh, you should pitch this here and there. And that's very important. And also, sometimes when you are struggling with what your story really is, talking to other people that understand will help you identify where the hook is and where it's going to be valued.
Yeah, we talk amongst ourselves. I know I was working on a story. Amir and I were both covering the same event, and I was writing something for Newsweek, and I was like, I'm not quite there. Can you read it? And he read it for me and gave me feedback. And Ronda, I know I've come to you before. We've sat on the phone sometimes for an hour and talked about our thoughts on different shows or whatever the subject might be, and that might lead to a pitch. So I know you probably heard of parallel networking before, but it's very real, and especially you're in an industry that is pretty small. Everybody kind of knows each other, especially if you're Black media. And then I think everything everyone else already said previously, when it comes to storytelling, we're always looking for stories too. So that's how the storyteller becomes part of the story. So same way that you mentioned having that opportunity with Hollywood Reporter, I was writing for a music site called SOHH when XXL came to me and said, you did this profile on these producers, Justice League. Can you interview them for a XXL? And that's how I came up. I really started, with the digital site, and then next thing I know, I'm writing for all these different print outlets. But it's all comes from just kind of putting yourself out there and just being, having the faith that someone is going to read your stuff and then they're going to want you to create more of it for them.
No, I was just like, she said someone's going to read your stuff, but knowing that you have something to say.
Yeah.
Giving voice to other people. Because at the end of the day, like many, many moons ago when I interviewed Ice Cube, this always stays with me. And I was like, oh, you could like rhyme about, flossing because you have a box at the Lakers game. You have all of this. And he said, somebody has to be the voice for the voiceless.
And on that note, I want to open it up for questions. If you have a
Yay,
question,
audience questions.
we'd love for you to come up to the front. There's going to be a mic for you over on this side.
Okay.
So if you can come up now, I saw some people raise their hands. You can come up to this mic and line up. You can line up against that wall, yeah. So I'd like for you to say your name, where you're from, and your major. I'm sorry, and your career goals, because you never know how, you can help out.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Fields. I'm a sophomore, communications and journalism double major with a concentration in sports from Snellville, Georgia, and I am an aspiring sports journalist, but I'm also open-minded to any media field career. So my question for you guys is, what motivates you to keep going? I know there's a lot of time within this business industry, like you hit walls. Like you guys were constantly talking about being criticized by the culture, possibly being criticized by the community, but also having to keep it real with your editors. So what motivates you guys to keep going?
You have to really love this, right? Because the thing is, it's like it's gonna be days when you're gonna be like, man, why am I doing this? It's gonna hit you, right? But you gotta remember the love for it, and understand why you're doing it. Ronda mentioned something earlier. It's like you're not really doing this. Think about what you're doing as something that's gonna impact not just this generation, but the next generation. What you're documenting now is going to be in history books. It's going to be archived. And so when you think about that, you know that it's bigger than you. You've been given a talent, you've been given a skill, you've been given an opportunity to learn at an institution that everybody can't get in. Everybody can't get into these institutions, right? So you have a tremendous opportunity, and you have to use your skill in a way where it's like, okay, I'm not just doing this for me, I'm doing this for my family, for my community, for this next generation. Because I know what I'm doing, what I'm documenting is gonna help that next generation. So I always go back to why you're doing your why. And once you go back to your why, it'll help you through those hard times.
And some of those things would be selfish, some of those things would be altruistic, right? Your own curiosity, your own love for words, your own desire to have information. Also, your desire to have a paycheck, your desire to take care of yourself, your desire to do the thing that you like doing and be able to support yourself doing it and create other opportunities for yourself. All of those are valid reasons on top of the spreading the word and getting out messaging. Do you think is important to the public at large?
I don't know how to do anything else. Like, it's just who I am.
Thank you.
And we're going to make sure we have a hard stop at 3 o'clock, which gives us about 10 minutes exactly. So we want to make sure you go directly to your question, and they'll go directly to the answer.
All right. My name is Jackson Nazu. I'm a sophomore sports journalism major from Detroit, Michigan. I want to pursue I either want to pursue sports journalism or also music management too, because I'm really interested in music. My question is, have you guys ever had to turn down a story because you just didn't know enough about the culture that was going in? As you know, Bad Bunny is doing the Super Bowl halftime show, and if y'all got a job to report on the halftime show, I know y'all would love to go. But me personally, I don't know anything about Bad Bunny. I don't listen to him. I don't know culture like that to report on it. So how would y'all go about doing that?
So you got to do your research, right? And so I think as journalists, we have to really always remember that we're explorers. And so if you're thinking about doing a story on Bad Bunny, find out who his fans is. Go to his fan club page. Interview that person who runs his fan club. Go to his lyrics. Read every lyric that he has on his top songs, and try to understand what those meanings behind those lyrics are, and just dig deep. And you have to kind of like discover what he is that makes him who he is. A lot of times we're given stories that we're kind of in the wilderness, and we're like, man, where do we start? And you're gonna get a lot of stories like that. You just gotta have to figure out how to start and do your research. Interview people. Janae said that sometimes you have to get like 5 or 6 sources before you even start. So interview the people that know this person the best, and then you can start there. But you can figure it out. But just know that that's how you have to start.
And be open. So going into it, like, oh, I don't know anything, so I shouldn't write about it. Like, I would say just maybe be open to the possibilities. Maybe you don't listen to them now, but after the Super Bowl, you might be one of the members of the fan club.
Let your curiosity lead you. Don't lose curiosity in whatever it is. Want to know.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, and you don't have to know anything about his music right now to know that his presence at the Super Bowl and the Trump administration, where ICE is taking down people every day, is a powerful statement of why he's even the Super Bowl halftime act.
My name's Darian Crisp. I'm a junior journalism major, minor in Black entrepreneurship from St. Louis, Missouri. And this question is specifically for Mr. Shaw. Did you grow up in an environment where trap was evident? And how did you embody and embrace trap so that you kept authenticity pure within your story?
Yeah, so I grew up in the West End, so like not too far from here, and so it was just something that was in Atlanta. Like Atlanta comes up with a lot of slang terms, a lot of things that that's just specific to the city, and so the word trap was just something that was just around. It wasn't really before it was a music genre. It was just a slang term that we would say amongst ourselves, right? So it was just something that was a part of Atlanta's culture. And it was just, eventually later on as I got older, it became something that was significant. And so it was just something that I, using my environment and seeing what was happening, seeing that Atlanta's music scene was thriving as well, and being able to kind of, take a journalistic approach and really highlighting those things. And even now, like, I'm not sure, do you listen to rap? So there's a movement of women rappers in Atlanta that's really taken off. And they're moving the culture in ways in TikTok in terms of YK Niece, that dance that she does with her hand. I don't know, what do they call it? What is it? Through there?
Something like that.
I don't want to see too old, but I'm just saying YK Niece, like Pluto, they have a movement that's happening, and if I'm a journalist, I would love that story. You know what I'm saying? That would be if I'm a young journalist, I want to understand why this women's movement in Atlanta, this rapping hip hop movement in Atlanta for women is taking off. So I would just, use what's around you. You're here. Find ways to approach those what's next. Because I haven't seen anybody on a major level talk about it. We see it on TikTok that it's big, but nobody on, from a major mainstream level is paying attention to what's happening with young women and how they're pretty much moving the culture right now. So that's how you have to look at it.
Thank you.
Also, you're from St. Louis.
Oh, St. Louis, Metro Bull.
Good afternoon. My name is Seth Beamer, junior journalism, theater, and performance double major from Philly, currently serving as the multimedia director for the Maroon Tiger student newspaper. You guys talked a little bit about Kendrick Lamar, and with him being my favorite artist, I tend to study him a lot. And studying Kendrick Lamar, it's easy to notice the repeated intentionality in the way he shows up, whether that be the Canadian tuxedo he wore at the Grammys or the color coordination in Native American clothing at the Super Bowl performance. So my question to you guys is, as a journalist and Black storyteller, how do you show up on a day-to-day basis in a way that allows you to be concrete in the culture and respected as a journalist?
I think it starts with your own personal integrity. All kinds of people will do things to cut corners or to try to get ahead or do or operate in a way that is less than honorable. So I think it kind of starts with you first, being a consistent person. This is how I want to show up. And then having respect for the subject, having respect for the people that you're talking to, and asking those questions in a way that, again, like sometimes you're going to have to ask a tough question that somebody might not want to answer or they might not want to talk about. But asking that question anyway and being respectful about it, and you'll be surprised what you get out of people if you approach them the right way, even if it's something that they're not too keen on talking about. A lot of it starts with you. Who are you as a person, and how do you treat people?
There's a segment of cultural criticism, and a lot of the stuff that you just dropped, you have really interesting pieces right there. In the observations that you made and the correlations between seeing the colors and Native American culture and so forth, or even the things that you noticed. So there is, not everything is just reporting to everybody, but you can write articles and reviews that pull out those cultural cues. So you might want to explore that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a little tall. Hello, I'm Gabrielle Sampson. I'm a political science scholar on the pre-law track at Clark Atlanta University, and I am an aspiring and growing political journalist. I serve as the Miss National Association of Black Journalists at CAU, and I also am the creator of my very own newspaper that's very recently grown, the Miss Education of Black History. So I wanted to ask you guys. Thank you.
Shout out.
So what advice would you give as experienced journalists that the younger generation might not know yet or haven't considered when it comes to starting your own media outlet? Because I know you guys emphasize starting your own and having your own voice. So what might not be considered throughout this process that you guys have experienced already or would like to pass down?
So I've done my own thing a couple times. I started with a blog, and then now I have a podcast. I think the main thing is just it's going to be hard. Yeah. It's never going to be easy. It's always a lot to think about, but I want to go back to parallel networking, like creating your community, building a community, going to your community for support. So when you need something, don't be afraid to ask for it. Sometimes the help that you need is like right there, whether that's, if you need other writers, if you need editors, if you need photographers, look to the people who are around you and closest to you. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be the main thing, but also just be ready to be strong because it's not going to be easy. The other thing I would say, and this actually answers your question as well a little bit, just I cannot emphasize enough how important your gut instinct is, your intuition. Trust yourself. Mm-hmm. You know what you're doing. Okay?
Yes,
all right.
Thank you.
Who else wants to answer?
Well, we're short on time, but that was great. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Noah Cathy. I'm a sophomore journalism major in social justice with a minor in sociology from Dallas, Texas. I serve as layout editor for the Maroon Tiger. Won Gold Circle Awards in TSPA, but the goal is to actually to be a lawyer. And yeah. Thank you.
Shout out.
And I want to talk about an experience that I had an interview back home where I deemed the experience or accolade more culturally relevant than the subject did, right? Where I was interviewing a person that I thought was like this monumental thing. I was the first African-American student to graduate from this old like white school where I'm from, and that person didn't see it as that, right? Or you're interviewing rappers or movie stars, for examples, that might not fully understand the gravity of their accolades, their accomplishments, or the roles that they play in society, right? So how do you make stories of those moments when the subjects themselves might not give you the credence or credibility to write those narratives?
Well, I mean, everybody that does something, a lot of times people are still it's a means to an end. So oftentimes when you interview historical people at the time, it's just very real things. They weren't necessarily, they didn't go to say, I came here to make history.
Right.
And so also with hindsight, sometimes you have to bring the context to people because some people don't even realize. Some people don't even know that you're the only one that's done this or, or that no one, did this particular thing before you. Like, I mean, even when people started collecting Jordans, like, they did not know
Sure.
that 30 years later that this would be a cultural touchstone. So at you doing your research, knowing what that history is, you bring that context to it. But you cannot expect everybody you talk to even know that what they're doing is significant. And some of the stories that you do now, you don't see them as significant until 20, 30 years later. Like, I mean, when we were doing it, we just wanted to write about hip hop. We didn't know that it was going anywhere. I mean, people told me I was wasting my life when I worked at a hip hop magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And also, I don't think there's anything wrong with exploring the tension between those two things.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it, or there's a group of people you notice that society is championing this accolade and the thing, and that person feels differently, explain why that might be a thing. Ask them specific questions about why they feel that way, and maybe how that relates to the broader society. They don't feel that way because they don't want to be tokenized. They don't want to be the first person. Some people reject that idea of being the first. I shouldn't have to be the first. Everyone should be able to do that. So you can explain that to the readers in the same way and still keep the general thesis of what it is that you want to talk about as far as how important that might be to other people.
Excellent.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian Cheyenne, and I'm a journalism major at Morehouse College. I am the current community external communications manager for Off Record Sounds, which is a music publication, and as well as I also co-host a podcast called The Bonnet Breakdown on with the Fusion Arts Collective.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
I like that title.
short synopsis, we discussed the intersection between art and culture and entertainment news. But the caveat is that anybody that comes on the podcast, you have to wear a bonnet. So we all sit down and we just go back and forth and chop it up about some different issues. And so I think last episode we went from talking about ethnomusicology to like the results of the last election and some of the things that people have been dealing with as a result. So we go a lot of places. But my question today was for Ms. Bolden. You spoke a little bit about how that conversation with Young Thug went and his response to some of your questions about police brutality. And I wanted to ask why entertainment journalism and why not politics? Because I feel like a lot of people, like you mentioned, Professor Ford, a lot of people look at entertainment journalism as almost being like a side thing, or they start talking about it like it's just gossip news or whatever. And I feel like a lot of times my own journey with entertainment journalism has definitely taught me that like my perspective has always been that entertainment journalism and that things that relate to the arts, like albums or movies or music, they're a way of being able to relate things to people that might not otherwise understand what those things might be trying to address. And so just from your perspective, I wondered what that journey was kind of like for you to be able to kind of make this space something for yourself.
So when I was your age, I had a mentor. She was a poet, and she was editing an anthology of erotica, of all things, right? She asked me to submit a story, and I told her, like, I don't feel comfortable. You know, I'm a poet. That's kind of private. Like, I don't know if I want to do that. And she told me writers write. And that has stuck with me for like 20-something years. Writers write. So as long as I'm writing, I'm at home. It doesn't really matter what I'm writing about, as long as I care about it.
Absolutely.
And so that would be my advice, is like just have an understanding that it doesn't matter if someone calls you a blogger or a journalist or a writer. Like at the end of the day, you're a writer, writers write, or you're a journalist, you're a creator, you're creative.
Yes, ma'am.
All of those things, like just understanding like that's who you are at your core. Like I think my identity as an artist is just as strong as my race to some extent. Like it's in me. Like Ronda said, I couldn't be anything other than that. And so that's kind of what's led me down the entertainment path. Like literally my life has dictated that path. I started just for fun doing interviews with artists, got a job offer, took it, did really well, got promoted, and then had another editor reach out, and another editor, and next thing I know, I'm almost to Ronda's level. Not quite as many, not quite as many outlets, but like just kind of all over the place. And
Absolutely.
then even with the Bossip, that was a path I hadn't expected to take. We were in a recession. The rates were being dropped at a lot of different publications, and I had someone tell me they're looking for a managing editor at Bossip. I needed a job. It was a writing job. That's what I cared about, not so much that it was gossip. For a moment, I thought, I'm only going to do this for a year.
Right.
It's gossip. Ended up falling in love with it. Loved the people, the owners at the time. Great. They allowed us to be creative. We had a lot of freedom. There was a lot of flexibility. We knew what the stories were, and we were able to bring them, and that was such an important thing. And then you asked about the thug, so I forgot to contextualize that the BET Hip Hop Awards were honoring Michael Brown at that particular award show. So that's why my question was even asked. So I had people in the comments who were coming for me, like, oh, she's trying to trick him with this hard question. No, all I was asking was, hey, we're honoring the memory of Michael Brown tonight. What do you think needs to be changed about the way that Black men are policed in America? And I'm thinking he's from the hood. He's going to have a great answer.
Right.
Who likes cops, right?
Right.
No, not a great answer. But it made a great story at the end of the day.
For sure.
Yeah. So I would just say life is going to take you, but just stand strong in like who you know you are and your identity, and trust. Just trust that you have the tools to take you where you're supposed to be. You're going to be right on time every time.
Absolutely.
And also I wanted to add, entertainment journalism is hard. And people, there are times, did a story one time, and they're like, well, I covered the White House. Well, with this, you have to have contacts. You have to keep on top of what's going on. It is not a frivolous thing. There is a lot of work in this industry.
Yeah. Don't let people with these haughty, don't let people with these haughty attitudes toward things. There's people who write about the White House that are bad at their job.
Facts.
People that write about Dow
Facts.
Jones and NASDAQ
Yes,
and
sir.
like complicated things, and they're terrible at their job. So you're either good at this or you're bad at this. And there's nothing, writers write. And if you're gonna do something and you do it well, then you do it well. And that's pretty much the end of it as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ewan. Last question.
What's going on, guys? Emmanuel Lee. I'm a senior journalism and communication studies double major. I know we short on time, so I'm gonna keep it quick. I'm working on I'm from New Jersey. Jersey boy.
You can
yeah.
hear it in the morning.
Yeah, I do. I don't hear it, but I guess. I'm working on a capstone right now. I'm a senior, and it focuses on cancel culture and its impact on artistry and its authenticity. So I want to ask you guys real quick. I thought this would be a perfect time to maybe grab a quote or two from my little article. How do you guys feel cancel culture has impacted artistry, whether it be musicians, painters, and even journalists as writers, because that is our art, right? That's how we tell our stories. How do you guys think that cancel culture has impacted the authenticity of it?
I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you know where cancel culture come from? Like the root of cancel culture.
The people?
No, the cancel culture. Do you know where it comes from? That term.
No, I don't.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a quick. So it's a quick thing. So what happens a lot of times is that our language gets co-opted, right? So the first time council was actually presented on mainstream platform, 1991, New Jack City. Wesley Snipes, he has a line where he says, "Counsel that."
That's a fact.
So counsel was something in our community that was used to say, all right, you're not moving the way we moving, so you counseled. You see what I'm saying? So it was something positive for us because it was like, if you're not moving in the right direction, we're going to counsel you.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That other side co-opted it and made it something negative. So understand that first before you go on this journey of what cancel culture means and how it's impacting, media.
Sure.
Get to the root of what it is, what it meant to the Black community first, and how it was co-opted.
Interesting.
So I just want to put that tidbit out in terms of the historical significance of what cancel culture is and what and how it became something other than what it initially was.
I think that's a really good point. what I would say is, because your specific question was how cancel culture has affected art and
It's authentic.
authenticity, right? I don't really think that cancel culture has had any effect on art. I think people can say whatever they want to say, and you suffer for whatever consequences come from that. The people complaining about cancel culture are people complaining that they can't say whatever they want and have everybody cheer and agree. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
No one's
it's a fact.
stopping you from saying anything.
For sure.
But if you say something and you lose your job, you lose your spot, or whatever that case is, then that was the price of you saying whatever you wanted to say. Freedom ain't free.
For real. Thank you guys. I'd love to chop it up with y'all more after if y'all have time.
Yeah, they can talk after.